Welcome to the Olathe Economic Development Council Quarterly Investors Meeting. I'm Oscar Healy. I'm the chair of the EDC. I want to first of all thank our sponsors. We have our series sponsor for 2020, that's Terracon. Thank you for all you do for the EDC. And our quarterly sponsors this quarter are Nabholz Construction and Enterprise Bank and Trust. So please be kind to our sponsors. As we get kicked off, I would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the fact that Mayor Mike Copeland passed away the 20th of August. Very sad news. He was a young man at 58 and had been mayor for the last 20 years. Services for Mayor Mike were last Friday at MNU. They were an in-person attended event as well as a virtual meeting that folks joined on live stream. I would say that it was a fantastic service, very well done. The city Chamber of Commerce to be commended for all the efforts in helping that come off as just a fantastic event. Mike, again, he was the mayor for 20 years, and two things I took away from attending the service was many times it was said that Mike Copeland was a servant leader, absolutely true. And his favorite occupation was being a dad, and he kept things in perspective, family first. So anyway, thank you for letting me acknowledge Mayor Copeland here. Now I'm going to pass this back to Tim and Casey, who are going to give us some activity updates. If you take it away, Tim.
Sure, thanks, Oscar. We'll be very brief so that we can get to the presentations in this limited time. So Tim McKee, CEO of the Olathe Chamber, and actually I'm going to let Casey go first. So Casey, and then I'll end real quick.
Thanks, Tim. Casey Willem, Vice President of Business Development for the Olathe Chamber of Commerce. Thanks so much for making today's luncheon. You will be receiving my third quarter business retention and expansion report, which profiles 54 businesses this quarter. Last quarter focused a lot on manufacturers. This quarter, there was a significant amount of small business represented, mainly because we want to make sure as many as possible take advantage of the state of Kansas's latest allocation of CARES funding, approximately $130 million. So as much as possible, we wanted to reach out to our small business community. Beyond the report, there is a lot of real estate development in our city. A main focus of ours is the recent groundbreaking of Millhouse's 228 unit, $36 million project in downtown Olathe. A project that we have been working on for years and years. So we're thrilled to have that project finally underway. Any questions, feel free to reach out to me after this meeting. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Casey. A couple of real quick things. Just a CVB report. I was going to do that really quick. And I'll just touch on one thing really quick. In the July STAR report, the occupancy's still running low. We're at about 41% occupancy. Same time last year, we were at about 65%. Our average daily rate is $92.42, which is same time last year, we were at 112. We've kind of plateaued a little bit in regard to occupancy and average daily rate. Most businesses, unfortunately, aren't traveling and probably won't travel through the end of the year. So good thing we are leading Johnson County. We're leading our peer sets as well in regard to occupancy and average daily rate. So a lot of that's being driven by sports and amateur sports and regional leisure travel. So update there on recruitment side. Just one main thing that I wanted to mention, and And I think we mentioned it before, Lineage, which was Project Frosty. They have purchased ground in South Olathe. This is the $100 million project, that refrigerated warehouse. They hope to have their footings and foundations in before the end of the year. That's a 450,000 square foot building, very unique building, but has started. The other item that I'd like to mention is that we are working with the county in regard to trying to help put together something business related through the CARES Act. They do have about $35 million that they're allocating for business, and spent half a day yesterday and all day today jumping back into that meeting right after this. So anticipate something from the county, hopefully for small business through the CARES funding. Oscar, that is it. Oh, one other thing, and we do have a golf tournament coming up. Wanted to mention that. If you haven't signed up, we'd love to have you sign up through the chamber, and you can reach out to anyone on our staff, but to help, we do have 4 or 5 foursomes left, but please sign up if you haven't. That's it, Oscar. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for making that plug, Tim. I talked to Susie earlier this morning, and she said there were 2 foursomes available, so maybe a couple got filled already today. So it's a great event, and obviously supports the Chamber of Commerce and everything the Chamber does. So the next item on the agenda is, or the real the quarterly meeting is for the school district updates for Olathe and Spring Hill. So we will we'll start out with Wayne. I'm going to read a couple of bios here. So Dr. Wayne Burke is the school superintendent for Spring Hill. They have a student population of 3,000 students and over 500 certified and classified personnel. On July 1st, 2015, Dr. Burke officially stepped into the position of superintendent. Beginning in 1997, Dr. Burke was the assistant high school principal and activities director of Spring Hill. He left for 3 years to serve as assistant superintendent of human resources in the Derby, Kansas school district. He returned to Spring Hill in 2009 to serve as assistant superintendent before being named superintendent-elect in 2014. Dr. Burke has his Doctor of Education from the University of Kansas, a master's degree in education administration from Emporia State, and a bachelor's degree in business education from Kansas State University. So he's covered all of the Kansas universities there, just about. He also is a member of numerous national and state level professional organizations, as well as local community groups. And then we have John Allison. He has worked in public education for the last 30 years. Prior to starting in Olathe in 2017, he served as superintendent in the Wichita Public Schools and the Mount Lebanon School District in Pennsylvania. He has also worked as a district administrator in the Grapevine Colleyville School District in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, associate superintendent for education services for the Shawnee Mission School District, and as a middle school and high school building administrator. He began his teaching career in Spring Hill as a high school social studies teacher and coach. John Allison obtained his Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Kansas and his Master of Science from Emporia State. He has completed doctoral coursework in education leadership at St. Louis University and Southwestern College. His wife, Rami, teaches in the Olathe School District, and they have 2 grown children. So we will start with Dr. Burke.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us. I did want to shout out to Mr. Allison there, because I think you heard that he started in Spring Hill, and so we claim him, and we think he's a pretty good guy. So with that being said, Wayne Burke, superintendent of Spring Hill, very proud to have that title. Awesome district, and if you've never been down here, come down and see us. There's still a few people out there that may not know where we're at. We're just south of 165th Street. If you go east to Flum and go all the way south to about 231st, we're a pretty good sized 71 square mile district. And so if you've ever been to Heritage Park, I would say that probably 75% of Heritage Park is in the Spring Hill district. And that kind of helps people get an idea of where we're at. We have quite a few families that live in the Olathe city limits, and that just keeps growing. And we're going to talk a lot about COVID-19, unfortunately, but I want to talk about something else real quick. We're not growing as fast as we used to be. Last few years, I've been able to say that we're the fastest growing district in the state. And unfortunately, the way our numbers are bearing out right now, that probably will not be the case. But we are excited about any of the students that we have, whether they've been with us for a while or they're new. And we're very proud of the fact we continue to grow. We did pass a bond issue in 2016, and we passed another bond issue in 2018. So a very, very supportive district. So with all the other things going on, I think sometimes we forget about all the construction that we're having. So we are opening our 5th elementary school, and that will be Dayton Creek Elementary School. When you consider not too many years ago, we only had 2 elementaries, and within a very short time, we were moving to our 5th elementary. But we open that coming up very soon. We have some partners on here that helped us build that. So shout out to Jay Dunn and DLR. So thank you for all your work on that. But that if you drive by, it looks like that place is ready to open tomorrow. And so very proud that elementary is coming on. We have an educational service center that one of the things that you can never have enough of is storage. And we are getting very close to having that finished. And with that service center, we'll have our technology department out there, our facilities, buildings and grounds will have a place. And then our district kitchen will actually be out there also. But we also set it up so that we can bring some students in and do some training with them so they get some real world hands-on examples of what's going on out there. And then last but not least, sometime we're hoping in the early spring that our district administrative center will be finished and that we'll be moving in out there. So sometimes with all the other things that we're talking about with COVID and the opening of school, that sometimes you have to you kind of forget that there's a lot of construction, a lot of building and growth going on. Still have quite a few people moving into our area, and very, very excited about that. We did start school last Wednesday. We are under the Johnson County Department of Health and Environment gating criteria and under the color code of red. So our elementary students are fully in, and they came in on Wednesday, and seems to be going pretty well. And then our secondary and middle school and high school kids are on remote. Also with that, we have about 10%, well, probably more like 10.8% for those of you who are very specific on your numbers, have 10.8% of our student body that have chosen optional remote learning. And so they have that opportunity to learn from home. We're very fortunate. We went one-to-one quite a few years ago. So our middle school, high school have MacBook Airs, and being able to provide that with that education for them. And then we've been one-to-one with the elementary, but we've not sent those home. So if there's a, knock on wood, hopefully this doesn't happen. But if we were to have to close our elementaries and move into a gating criteria that would not allow them to come in, we would be able to send devices home with our elementary students as well. And then that way we can continue the remote learning. We've worked a lot with our community to provide places for our students to go that may not have very good or reliable internet access. Our district has bought over 150 hotspots, and we've been distributing that as well. So a lot of good things are going on. I think sometimes we get, our head gets down a little bit. We get to talking about COVID and all the negative aspects that go with that. But, on the other side is we're still educating kids. We're doing the best that we can for them, still have teachers that are, very dedicated to making sure that our kids get the best education possible. Our administrators have worked tirelessly throughout the summer to get ready. And is it perfect? Absolutely not. We never thought it would be perfect, but we've never had a perfect year yet anyway. So, but we're doing the best that we can and educating kids, and we're excited as to what this year brings. just like everybody else, I would love it if every student was here and that we didn't have some of the, temperature checks and social distancing and mask and things like that. And hopefully someday before this year's out, sooner rather than later, we would really like to move into that. But with that, I'm gonna be quiet and turn it over to Mr. Allison.
Thank you, Wayne, for claiming me. I'm not sure anybody wants to claim me right now as we prepare for the beginning of a school year. And I can touch on some of the same things Wayne did around how we're starting the school year. But I think it's important, as you all know, and have heard me talk about, some of you served on our committee with our strategic plan. So we're continuing to stay focused on our strategic plan, regardless of what format our schools are in, whether it's in person or hybrid or remote. Those are still important goals we have. That work continues. We've got some additional challenges now when you think about the different ways in which our students are engaging with their teachers. But one of those key pieces with our strategic plan was to continue to develop our academies and our career and technical education. We were part of a grant process with the Kauffman Foundation. We've got about we received a grant for $150,000 to help us continue to work toward how do we expand that? How do we make sure that those real world assets that our students all graduate with at least one of those real world assets? And that's something that our board felt was very important. It's included as part of how we're going to gauge whether our strategic plan is successful or not moving forward, is how well our graduates are able to meet those objectives. So it's a marathon, not a sprint on all of this, and your role and support in helping us accomplish that is going to be critical. So we're looking forward to see how that develops this year and moving forward. We're also opening our first dual language elementary program, starting with kindergarten, and we're going to add a grade level every year. Starting in one school, and we hope to add that to a couple more schools. So we're got a lot of things that we planned for this fall that, in spite of COVID and all the issues and unknowns and apprehensions that has created, that we want to continue moving forward. Our teachers and other staff have really been focused trying to get ready for what will be the most unusual year in education, I think probably in our history. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be ever evolving. So for them to prepare, I mean, they know what to do when they've got kids in class, but then you add in social distancing and some of those other measures. You think about hybrid learning, you think about remote learning. It's been a busy last couple of weeks as teachers came back on contract to make sure they're prepared to handle whatever direction we need to go throughout this year, and to make sure that it's a quality educational opportunity. No comparison to what school districts had to put together last spring. We had to do that very quickly without the infrastructure and the training and everything else. So this is a whole new educational approach than what our families experienced in the spring. For us, we were one-to-one at the high school with PCs. We're one-to-one at the middle school with iPads, and we had a 2-to-1 classroom set at the elementary. So we realized last spring we were going to need, in preparation for this school year and not knowing what it would hold, to get 1-to-1 across the district. And begin to put that in process. So our goal was to move middle schools to PCs and then be able to keep our elementary on iPads moving forward. So as we work to order those PCs for the middle school, then we'd repurpose and be able to use that to backfill for our elementary. This is one of those, you can't make it up. You can imagine with school districts across the country trying to do the same thing. Manufacturing has been tight. We were, pushing our schedule. the Surface Goes, which is what we were getting for the middle school. We found out a couple weeks ago, the last 4 middle schools shipment was headed our way, and the truck rolled in Wichita and went into a ditch that was full of water. So only about 200 of the several thousand we needed were salvageable. So just another twist to what we needed to do. Figured out a way to keep those 4 schools on iPads till the October when we can get the next shipment in. But it's like your businesses, there's always challenges, and even the best laid plans can go awry. And that was one of those examples. So we are starting at the elementary level for the first 3 weeks of school in a hybrid format. So students will be on site 2 days a week and then off site 3 days a week. Of course, that didn't make some of our patrons happy about taking that approach. As we began to look at it, we realized as our teachers came on board and all, there were some pretty significant retrainings that were going to be necessary for our student, or I should say re-education. They're going to enter a school in which how they enter, where they go, face masking, lunch, recess, PE, all those types of things, restroom, are going to have a whole new set of rules and expectations from what they're used to. So having much smaller groups to be able to work with students on re-educating and getting that down, as well as smaller groups, will make it easier for teachers to assess where are they academically after not having been in school since March, where are they social emotionally, and to put the plans in place to be able to meet our students. And why we know that had an impact for parents, it equates to about 7 days of alternative daycare. When you think over that 3-week time period, we felt it was important enough to make sure we started right, because one of the lessons we're seeing from school districts that have started all across the country, there were some that had been able to successfully get schools started and keep students and staff without significant COVID issues, and others that couldn't. And literally within a week or 2 of opening, they were having to step back and look at remote. We want our kids in school. We are working based on advice from the Johnson County Department of Health and the Kansas Department of Health and Environment to guide us. We're not the experts. We're not the epidemiologists. We're not, that's not our expertise. So our school boards are relying on that information to help make decisions. The one thing I can guarantee we have accomplished in all of this is at some point in time, since we have a wide continuum of where people feel schools should be or activities should be, those types of things, we've pretty much been able to upset the apple cart one way or another at some point. And it will continue to evolve and change. Something as simple as what are school districts doing around masking? We've changed 3 times since July because of different guidance we've had. We started with the county, then the governor's masking order, CDC changes, and I think that will continue to evolve as well as we continue the school year. So it's going to be a challenge as we move forward. We're having to change, like everyone else, our business model to a huge extent, retrain our staff, and then deal with the situations as they come up moving forward.
Thank you, John. And Wayne, I appreciate the remarks. We have one question in the chat room that I see. I should have mentioned that earlier in our prior to having the superintendent speak. So we may just ask folks to unmute and ask questions. But first off, we have a question that's on what date do you take the official student count, and how is that accomplished in the COVID world?
In the state of Kansas, September 20th is our date count. And, the in-person that's easy. They're here. The remote or optional remote, there's requirements that we have to make daily contact with those students. And daily contact means more than just seeing them for a couple minutes and then signing off. We're spending significant time with them. So you basically check your students that are there before September 20th, the kids that are actually there on September 20th, and then following up. I know that there's quite a few superintendents this year specifically that have asked for a second count date because we feel that once school is back up and running, there's some students that families chose to homeschool or to go virtual route. We feel like some of those students will come back. One of the things that I can tell you that in Spring Hill, when we had the elementary kids come in and parents actually saw what we were doing for the safety measures, we started having a few people coming back after that. So don't know exactly when that will happen, but we're hoping that the state will consider a second count date.
John, Wayne, you guys, I know that connectivity is a big issue. And what is the percentage in both school districts of teachers and students without internet or good internet access?
I'm gonna jump in real quick, Tim. That's a loaded question because when you say good access, we have people that have access, and then we have people that have spotty access, and then we have people that don't have any kind of device at all. So the percentage is kind of hard to figure that out. I'm trying to remember, I think we have had requests for about 82 of our hotspots. And percentage wise, 82 out of 3,400 students. But you know, you've still got your elementary students that are actually in the building. So it's kind of hard to come up and do the math, but when you use the word good access, our district has really good access here. What I have at home is probably better than a lot of other people have, but I wouldn't call it really good. So, John?
Yeah, our internet access is better than Spring Hill, and I know after you get outside of town, as Wayne said, it becomes much more difficult. That was something we worked on this spring. Our building principals made contact with each family to try to determine what that internet access looked like. We've worked with many of the internet providers to help families as well. As the board, we're renting hotspots to be able to provide families that just don't have an option, because we know that connectivity could be a real barrier to students being able to participate educationally when we're remote. So we've really worked, and I think all the school districts in the area have worked to try to make sure that that's not, that isn't a barrier for our families and our students.
You guys, one of the issues that we're working on at the county and with the CARES Act is connectivity. So, you know, they're even looking at, can some of these funds be used to help families with that, because it may not be an issue of whether or not there's good internet access. It's whether or not they can afford it is probably, and that there's some families that just can't afford really good internet access, I guess, is the issue. So it's trying to get a grasp of what that number is, you know, something that we're as a committee struggling with. So kind of a loaded question, actually. May want to talk to you offline about it. One other question that I had, you mentioned trying to get students one-to-one with these devices. Was there any help or assistance that you received from the state or the federal government regarding trying to upgrade students' devices?
Not directly. School districts receive some care funds. So I can give you an example. For Olathe, we received about 1.7 million. You know, the hot spots, the lease, the filtering, everything that came on, that was, you know, somewhere, depending on how many we actually put out, will be between $700,000 and $900,000 just to get the PPE, the hand sanitizer, and everything else ready for the start of the school year. That was in the 1 million to 1.5 million range. So what we received has very quickly been utilized by school districts just for PPE and some of those basics. We really didn't have anything that was dedicated toward helping with any of the technology aspects. And that's been a sizable expense for school districts, not only in Kansas, but I think across the country, is to how do you do that, and having to reshift where we've spent money before to be able to provide that for our students.
I'm going to echo that just a little bit. The other thing is, I think there's a misconception that there's this money available and we automatically get it. We did get some money for the CARES, but there's a lot of talk about the Sparks money. The Spring Hill's supposed to get a little bit of Sparks money from Miami County, and then the rest of it from Johnson County. But as of right now, there's still discussions about that money coming in. So sometimes you hear somebody from the state saying, well, that money's available. Well, being available and being able to write checks off of it are two different things. And I'm not being critical. I'm just saying that right now, that money has not hit our bank accounts. And, John was talking about PPE. We figure that just the things that we're doing in our district is going to cost us about $500,000 just for safety measures. And, I think right now we're guaranteed about $250,000. So the rest of that money has got to come from somewhere. Now, I have full faith that Johnson County will come through and we'll get some funds for that. But if not, we have to plan, because that safety of our students is still going to have to be there, whether the funds are there for it or not.
A couple other questions coming in here. One is, how do you think this will transform education in the future? So with challenges become opportunities, how is COVID going to change the face of education as we move forward?
I think it's going to change the way that we do business. There's going to be a time that many people do not feel comfortable coming back. And with that, I think John mentioned, we didn't do a very good job last spring. We'll admit it. And, some of us were going in thinking we're going to extend spring break for a couple weeks. And next thing you know, the rest of the year was canceled. And so then we had about a couple weeks to try to figure out a way to educate through the end of the year. So we did learn from that. I think we're doing a much better job right now than we did last year. As our teachers learn more and gain confidence, we're using different platforms. And again, that connectivity is an issue. And we're, first of all, we have great educators. We have complete faith in them that they're going to do a great job of educating, but they're kind of having to learn this as they work. I don't know that we'll ever go fully back to the way it used to be, just because we're learning some things now that we can do that, even if we're fully in, that we can implement back into the classroom. So with that being said, I think it's going to change the way we do business. And I have faith our teachers are going to figure out a way to do it that's better or best for our students.
I would agree with Dr. Burke. I think it's going to change how we approach it as our teachers work through the use of technology, more of the blended classroom, the flipped classroom, as they become more comfortable with it, and some opportunities for our students as we think about what we're going to learn through large numbers of students and remote learning. There's nothing that replaces a teacher in the classroom. Remote learning works well for some students and doesn't for others. But I think blending those two as we move forward and giving us an opportunity to think about it. I can tell you one thing that's going to change in the county, from something that's just been kind of a traditional right, or snow days. We don't intend on having any snow days. Those days will now become remote education days. Sadly, hot chocolate getting to sleep in won't quite have the same effect moving forward, because we're now know what to do, how to do it, and have the devices in our students' hands that those are the types of things, even how we've operated traditionally. I think we're going to see changes that will stay with us once we're once we're out of the pandemic and return to a more normal school.
We all look forward to that. So is there a concern with the fact that the school year is starting later than planned, that there's enough school days in the school year? Will it have to be extended in the spring?
Every school district had to look at their calendar differently. The state allows, there's a set of auditing requirements for you to meet the state mandatory number of hours. What counts and what doesn't count. Like at elementary, does a recess count? It does if it's not butted up to lunch and various things like that. So each of our school districts has had to modify and look on how do you make up that time. Professional development time counts as half. As we were able to look at it, we had a number of professional development days built in. We've converted some of those to remote learning days. We also looked at when students entered school, oftentimes they went to the cafeteria or the gym, and there was time for teachers to prepare in the morning while the students were getting breakfast and in common areas. Can't do that under COVID. So as students now move to the classroom and instruction begins earlier, so you pick up additional hours through the school year that way. There's just a lot of different ways that school districts had to look at it. We will not have the excess number of hours that we've had in the past, but we'll be above the state minimum. And that's really how schools have been able to do snow days. We all built a calendar that had a couple extra days built in, and we're just not going to have that latitude this year. But schools have had to adjust start times. We adjusted start times at the high school. Our high schools are going to be on a block schedule versus all 5 days versus a mixed schedule. And we've had to make changes to be able to adjust for that.
Yeah, don't really have much to add to that. One of the things that we looked at is we have professional learning community where every Wednesday the kids would come in at late start or early release, depending on what grade level. And we've removed that from the first semester. We had quite a few extra days built in for snow days. And just, John, I'm glad you're the one that said that, because I can tell that there's all across the county, there are people that just drop their jaws on the no more snow days. But unfortunately, or fortunately, I think that we now have the ability to educate on those days. And there's going to be some other times that we made some adjustments to our calendar. I'm sure that Olathe did too, that we took a different calendar to our board and asked for them to approve. And in doing that, we added in some days that we didn't have, which we normally would have had traditionally at the beginning of the year. So we made some adjustments.
Okay, the next question is regarding private schools and your reaction to that. So it's confusing to see private schools for the middle and high schools open, but the Olathe schools are not. Some parents are transitioning students to private schools because of this. Can either of you comment on that?
Sure. The private parochial schools have to make the decisions based on their community. The Johnson County school boards wanted to follow the experts in the science and to take a look at that gating criteria as part of the decision points that each school district made for their students. There isn't a clear cut, this is the right way, this is the wrong way. What are the implications there? So it's why you're seeing school districts make different decisions. Some school districts that are opening, bringing all students in. I think part of that depends on their numbers and how many students can be in class and social distancing. And you'll see other school districts that have decided to start everybody remote or somewhere in between, like Spring Hill and Olathe have done. The gating criteria will be something that the county continues to take a look at. I could tell you that the county school districts looked at not only Johnson County's gating criteria, the Kansas Department of Health put out gating criteria, and several districts have adopted that. Children's Mercy has guidance to open schools, as well as the CDC. And there was a regional gating criteria that was put out. And I know all the school districts have looked at those those various gating criteria and recommendations and criteria. And I know we'll continue. I can speak clearly for the Olathe School Board. They'll continue to listen to the community, listen to the experts, and then try to make the best decision they can. And that may include changes to what they see and hear around the various gating criteria that they're assessing.
Ditto. I can't say it any better than he did. No need to repeat the same thing. So.
And John Wayne, I assume it has something to do with you have multiple buildings to deal with, not one building, like a Catholic high school that has one building versus 35 at Olathe or in the 30s. And Wayne, I know you have multiple buildings as well too. So it's not apples to apples, and it's somewhat ridiculous in my mind to even compare. But anyway, that's just me. Oh.
A lot of moving parts.
Agreed.
What is the impact on students who qualify for free and reduced lunches? What's being done to assure these students receive their meals in the environment today?
I can speak for Spring Hill. We're still providing lunch. I mean, we provided lunch all last spring and then through most of the summer. And so whether a student is in our building or not, they still have the ability to get a lunch, especially for their free and reduced. And we do have sites that they can go and to pick up that lunch. And I can tell you that I can't think of an administrator or a superintendent anywhere in the state that isn't worried about our kids making sure that they get fed. And so I can tell you that as soon as we started hearing about the gating criteria and there was a possibility that kids would not be in the building, every one of us contacted our food service directors and asked them to continue to communicate with our state director. And then also, this is a federal breakfast and lunch program that we have to follow rules and guidelines on that. My understanding is the Secretary not Secretary of Education, but, and I'm going to say this wrong, but there is something has come out from the federal government about continuing free lunch throughout through December 31st. My understanding is that there are waivers involved, and I can tell you that Cheryl Johnson from the state of Kansas has already got that paperwork in her hands. I believe at 1 o'clock today, she is meeting with the various food directors across the state. And again, when we had those lunches that we were providing for families when the buildings were closed, we had sites that people could go pick up their lunches and breakfasts as well. And we will continue doing that. Maybe not as many sites, but that's what we're planning to do. John?
Yeah, very similar. We're providing lunches for pickup, even if a student's remote or we're in hybrid from their school. We served meals all spring long, all summer long. We'll continue to do so. And this just shows you some of those regulatory challenges. What Wayne is referring to is a reduction in the paperwork required to qualify for free and reduced lunch with the federal program. The problem is that paperwork is required in many different ways for school funding in Kansas, and so that you've got one entity saying you don't need the paperwork, but we're going to need it to be able to meet the state requirements, unless in some way those are waived. So it's just a little bit of the dance we have to do as we're working with all the different changes coming from the state and federal levels as we're working to try to provide for our students.
So without, it being an abnormal year in remote learning, we don't have the school buses running that we would normally have. If we go back to in-person teaching, how easy is that to ramp up?
Currently, we're running our buses because we have elementary schools. And the other thing is our district chose not to follow the gating criteria for activities. So we still have middle school kids that ride the bus that would need to get to school for activities. So we had to make an adjustment to run routes in the afternoon, whereas normally we would be taking them home after school. We run those routes a little bit earlier to pick up the kids to bring them to activities, mainly middle school and some high schools. Probably it's not so much ramping it up as making sure that we have quality people driving those buses. And I'm telling you what, you want to talk about a special place in heaven, you have somebody that can drive a bus and have anywhere from 30 to 60 young people behind them and get them safely thousands of miles every day. Those are phenomenal people. And I can tell you our district's probably looking for drivers. I'm assuming John's is too, and pretty much anybody throughout the state is looking for additional drivers. So if there's anybody listening in that's looking for some part-time work, we can put you to work.
That's a real challenge for school districts as we think about a lot of our classified hourly folks that when we do return back, we've got to be able to have those employees. And how do we keep them engaged during this time period? I know we have a contract with the transportation company. They don't want to lose drivers because if they lose them, it's hard to get them back if they find other jobs, and the training that's required to get all your CDL certifications and everything else is about 6 to 8 weeks for a bus driver. So we're actually having conversations with them for the 4 hours a day that they hire those drivers, or their other jobs we can utilize them for in the district, such as helping with meal handouts, being able to provide some of the materials that students may need to pick up at their school for their remote learning and those types of things. So it's a challenge, and the longer we go in a remote capacity, the more challenging it'll be to be able to keep those employees engaged and not have them looking for jobs elsewhere. And we're going to need them when we open back up. Can't operate without them. So that's a real challenge for us right now on how do we keep our staff and keep them productive.
John, Wayne, are you all both familiar with what the YMCA is trying to achieve with this learning academy, where they can help essential workers with children that may either not feel comfortable going back to school or may need other assistance? Do you guys see that as a positive program? Are you familiar with it? And programs like that we're discussing a lot of that at the county level as well to see should we be assisting that kind of remote tutoring separate, for kids that may need that extra help, or parents that may be having difficulty. Are you familiar with that program? Or I know it's very early, but are you working with them? Do you see it as a positive or a negative?
I know a little bit about it. We've been working with our Y-Care to, I think one of the things that's going on is if it's a younger student and they're at home, they may have a parent there, but they also may be at daycare. And some of the daycares have said, we really don't have the people to help your child be doing their schoolwork. And so I think while Y-Care is trying to fill that void of having some people that are actually could come in and tutor or assist students with their work, whether they're remote learning or they're offline. And so we are working with them to provide something for some of our middle school staff and our community members. So, or I'm sorry, it would be for our people who have sixth graders, and it's our staff members and our community members that have sixth graders. And so we're trying to work something out that would be available to them. Not only would they have a place for their children to go, but somebody that could assist them with their work during that time period. So I applaud them. I know some other groups are working to try to provide that additional support for the students. You know, some families are fortunate where a parent can stay home and help, and they feel that they qualified or they feel confident that they can help the kids with their work. There's other situations where they don't feel confident, or there's not somebody from the home to help them. So as long as it's a legitimate group that's there to work with the kids, I'm supportive of that.
It's filling a community need right now. And both the Johnson County Park and Rec and the YMCA have put really good processes in place about maintaining cohort groups of students and small numbers and those types of things. You know, for parents that just don't have another option. It's been somewhat controversial as well. Johnson County Park and Rec is going to use a couple of our middle schools to be able to maintain some small groups to help with that. It's going to be limited numbers because of the social distancing and the small cohort groups of 150 or so. And some folks have been upset, why are we allowing those kids into the building when we're not allowing our own students? And again, it's a much smaller number when you're talking 40 or 50 in a middle school compared to 600 to 900 kids. It's different, but you know, they're trying to step up and fill community need, and we've been trying to work with them on how can we do this logically to be able to help them and to help our parents out. So yeah, I think as Wayne said, done correctly, we see that as really helping our parents in the community and trying to create a little bit of balance and a bridge until we're ready to have students back full time. Our goal is to, the week of the 28th would be our elementary students starting back 5 days a week, that we're transitioning for just that 3 weeks of hybrid. You know, and we'll see how that transition goes. But that's our ultimate goal, is to start our elementary full time on the 28th, and then we'll be able to look at the week of the 22nd with new guidance from the county on where we might be ready to go for our middle schools and our high schools.
Well, thank you both for your words. I know, just as you would like to see students in the classroom, this group would actually like to get together in person. It is good to see the names and faces on the screen. Just a reminder, we started off, Tim mentioned that the golf event for the Chamber of Commerce is next week, Wednesday the 9th, 8 a.m. at Prairie Highlands. So would enjoy seeing you all there. And those that maybe haven't signed up yet, please reach out to the Chamber. Susie Carson is the person to reach out to, and she can get you signed up. As I said, there's a couple of foursomes available. Our series sponsor again is Terracon. Our quarterly sponsors for this meeting today are Nabholz Construction and Enterprise Bank and Trust. Again, thanks to them. So we'll let you all get back to your day 5 minutes early. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Wayne. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
I did want to throw in, Nabholz is one of our partners too. I forgot to say that earlier. I apologize. So thanks to Nabholz as well. I want to get in trouble.
Good plug, Wayne.
Thank you, guys.